They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, everybody? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So we're talking about something a little different today. We're not focusing on any one specific team, more something that's going on in the league as a whole and at large. To me, this upcoming season might be the one that finally kills tanking. If you looking up and down the NBA and about what all these teams are trying to do, it really feels like more teams than ever are trying to make a run for the playoffs. They have decided that it's not worth it to, be horrible for an entire year, get a little bit better chance at a lottery pick, in exchange for making your fans and your players unhappy. Coaches and GMs worry that their jobs will be on the line. They might get on the hot seat for doing something like that. And ownership just decided that they kind of want to make some more money, by having fans be interested and, really making those pushes for the playoffs. And so really all around, it feels like teams are kind of deciding that it's not worth it to tank. And that's due to two things, two changes that the NBA has made in the past couple of years that have really, changed the landscape of the league in this way, right? First of all, it was the flattened lottery odds. A couple of years ago, they decided to change up the way that the lottery works. Now the worst teams don't have as high of a chance of getting those high draft picks. It's more spread out between the teams that are all through the lottery. And we saw this in effect just a couple of years ago with the New Orleans Pelicans jumping up to first overall, the Memphis Grizzlies getting the second pick. And those were both teams that weren't, they weren't bottom 5 records in the league. Those were like mid to late lottery teams that just got lucky and were able to jump up and get those high draft picks. And last year we saw it with the Chicago Bulls and Charlotte Hornets both jumping up into the top 4 when they were projected to be there. The Wolves and the Warriors were, among those with the worst records, but still, we've seen this in action a couple of times now. And just with the way that the new lottery odds work, teams have decided it's not quite worth it to, only win 10 to 15 games all year. They decided they'd rather, put a little bit more of an interesting product on the court and please their players by, at least trying to put something competitive out there, right? And just, I want to kind of go through a couple of teams here. I really, every season there's like usually about 7 to 10 teams who, are just totally tanking. They're not going to be good. They know they're not going to be good. And so they kind of just, trade away all of their veterans, prioritize youth development, and just try to be as bad as you possibly can in order to get a high draft pick. Maybe that's due to some injuries occurring or whatever. Just decide that it's not worth it. Might as well just try to get, a high overall pick, right? This year, I'm only counting like 4 to 5 teams who are really in that group. And there's only one in the Western Conference and a couple in the East, right? The Western Conference team is the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have traded everybody away, tore the entire roster down for draft picks, and they are actively trying to be bad. That's part of Sam Presti's strategy, and that's really one of the only teams that is aggressively committing to tanking for next year and maybe for the next couple. And then the Eastern Conference, you have the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, yes, Kevin Love is still on the roster, but they've still got a lot of young talent. They've been drafting near the top of the lottery ever since LeBron James left a couple of years ago, and they're still very much in rebuild mode. Even if the team is trying to make win-now moves, they aren't really going to be very good, so they've kind of figured to mostly stay away from veterans and just prioritize youth. Maybe we'll see a Kevin Love move still in the works at the trade deadline, as well as the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons, who I figure are both in a similar boat, right? The Pistons are doing a similar thing to what the Knicks did last year, which is sign a ton of veterans with the cap space that you have, try to at least be a little bit competitive while still developing your youth. The Knicks, still have a couple of those veterans left over from last offseason, but they've kind of figured it out this year. They didn't really overpay anybody, and they're prioritizing developing their young talent, as well as the Pistons, who, yes, they signed a bunch of, big guys in free agency this offseason, but still don't figure to be very good. We'll see what they do with Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose, whether they decide to, trade off some of those vets for more picks, or if they want to put somewhat of a competitive team and at least, not completely bottomed out in the Eastern Conference. As well as the Chicago Bulls, who maybe are a little bit better than all those other teams that I mentioned. Still have some young talent on the roster. Also some veterans there. Zach LaVine, while not quite a veteran, he's still a little bit older than their core young group and is a very good basketball player, as well as signing a couple of veterans this offseason to, at least try to be a little bit competitive. I don't really have them as a contender for the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but they could at least be sort of close, and they're not as bad as those other 3 teams in the Eastern Conference there. But other than that, pretty much every team is trying to make a push for the playoffs, and we see this in the Western Conference, right? I've talked about this a lot over the past couple of weeks. The Western Conference is so tough. Every single team there is trying to push for the postseason, with the exception of OKC. If you're just looking at it, here are all of the teams who are, going to be making a playoff push this year. Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets are all guaranteed postseason locks. The Rockets, who knows if they decide to blow it up, they could join the group of tanking teams at the bottom, but that's to be determined there. And then as well as the Jazz, Mavericks, Trailblazers, Suns, Pelicans, and the Warriors are all definitely going to be pushing for those playoff spots, as well as the Grizzlies. I don't know if I said them before. The Timberwolves are also in there. And then as well as the San Antonio Spurs, the Sacramento Kings, both of those teams, kind of a little bit more veteran heavy, but are still, they've been in the mix in the past couple of years and they haven't really made any blown up moves. So you got 14 out of 15 teams in the Western Conference who are looking to make a push for the playoffs, and adding that 9th and 10th seed. I mentioned that second thing that the NBA has done, right? The first thing was flattening the lottery odds. The second thing was adding those 9th and 10th seeds, being able to participate in those play-in games. That's pretty enticing for a lot of these teams. You can go all year and then only have to win 2 games to get into the postseason and have the right to, play against whoever the 1 seed in the conference is, and, play against the 2 seed as well if you can up into the 7 seed there. That's going to be really enticing especially for this Western Conference race, for teams like the Grizzlies, and the Pelicans and the Kings, and the Timberwolves that are looking, maybe don't have quite a realistic shot at the 8th seed because of just how deep this conference is. But, who knows? If you get into a 1-game shootout, maybe a lot of your guys get hot, or another team has an injury late in the year, you could capitalize on that and maybe get into the playoffs. So, that's what a lot of those teams are going to be looking to do. And then it's a similar situation in the Eastern Conference, right? There's a couple more bad teams over there. But if you're looking at it, the Orlando Magic haven't really made any blown up moves. They're going to be a similar team to last year. The Washington Wizards, who have been reluctant to trade Bradley Beal, they're looking like they're still trying to make a playoff push there. As well as the Atlanta Hawks, who signed a bunch of guys in free agency. They're going to be pushing for a playoff spot. And then I think the most clear example of this to me is the Charlotte Hornets, who a lot of people expected them to bottom out for another year, but instead they've brought in Gordon Hayward, who he's not the most flashy signing, not the best player that's available out there, right? But he's certainly a guy who can come in and help you push for that 9th seed, that 8th, 9th seed, potentially get into a play-in game, trying to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Michael Jordan decided, hey, it's time to try to build a sustainable winner around here. It's not worth those better lottery odds just to lose 10 more games and have nobody care, right? They're going to try to field a competitive roster around LaMelo Ball, Gordon Hayward, a couple of other young guys. They're still trying to be one of those teams in that playoff race in the Eastern Conference. So when you're really looking at it, there's only a few teams out there that are really trying to bottom out, and we've seen it over the past couple of years. The number has slowly gone down. There used to be a lot of teams who are aggressively tanking. Now I only see 1 who's aggressively tanking and like 3 or 4 who really have no other choice. But other than that, pretty much every team in the league is really going to be fighting for those playoff positions. And I think that just makes for more competitive basketball because, pretty much last year you would pick a team like the Warriors after losing Steph Curry and not having Klay Thompson for the whole year. You would pretty much be picking them to lose every single night, as well as the Cleveland Cavaliers. You were picking them to lose every night, and the Detroit Pistons and the Hawks, all these teams that, you weren't really expecting them to win games at all. This year, that number is really only 3 to 4 teams. So I think that's overall good for the league, and it's going to be, lend itself to a lot more competitive basketball overall next year, just because I feel like it's more balanced than it's ever been, and that's going to be exciting to watch. So overall, I'm just really excited for next year. I think it's going to be awesome to watch these playoff races. You know that Western Conference playoff race is going to come down to the wire. It's going to be the last game of the night. One of these teams is going to be playing, and there's going to be like 4 teams watching, biting their nails, trying to figure out who's going to win, because that might determine whether they're going home or whether they're going to be playing tomorrow. So, that's always going to be really exciting. I'm looking forward to it for sure, and I really feel like that's just how close it's going to be this year, because a lot lot of teams are really trying to be competitive. So that's all I got for you on that. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about, all this going on in the NBA and how, teams have kind of decided to forego tanking, at least for now. So yeah, with all that said, I will see you guys in the next one.